Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Creative Real Estate Ownership with Josh Silverman. I'm Josh Silverman of Kai Real Estate here in Berkeley, California. And today's episode is called From Scarcity to Abundance, Building and Financing ADUs in California. And you'll see me return to ADUs a lot. ADUs are a wonderful way to get into the market, to build value. They have many uses. They can be very creative. They can be very beautiful, and you'll see me kind of reference them a lot. And today, it's kind of in honor of Ezra, Klein, and Thompson's book called Abundance that's being released this week. And they've brought up this concept of the abundance agenda, and it's in hopes of changing some policies around Democratic-run cities and states, for that matter, to be more focused on growth and less tied to regulation and procedure, right? So from the scarcity of housing to the abundance of housing is kind of where this is a piece of the abundance agenda, and it's one that I'm certainly in favor of. So in talking about ADUs, I found that the history of ADUs has been one of from scarcity to abundance. And what I mean by that is in 1982, legislation came out, a Senate Bill 1160 came out, and it basically allowed you to build these accessory dwelling units in the backyard. I think they're called granny flats. They didn't have a more dignified name, but we love our grannies. But during that year, and then all the way through 2002, there was another bill that came out, and it basically promoting the construction of these ADUs in the backyard. During that period of time, from 1982 through 2002, and then all the way through 2016, what they were finding was that there was these state laws that were promoting the building of these units, but then there were local jurisdictions were running a lot of interference. So they had setback requirements, parking requirements, and it made it very difficult to build. And so during that time, from 82 all the way to 2016, very few ADUs were built. Come 2016, we're in a housing crisis. We're not building housing for middle-class people. We have these underutilized lots, these single-family lots with these huge backyards that are space. The idea of urban infill and creating more housing close to transit centers and to jobs, and again, middle-income folks were getting priced out of the market. And so come 2016, there was a new, really big push to streamline the approval of ADUs, and they essentially boosted construction of ADUs from that point, from 2016 on, by 42 to 76% per year since. So what happened? So what is that evolution from scarcity to abundance? Why is it that we have to go through this kind of long, painful process to build something that nowadays are considered tools to address homelessness, tools to address housing affordability, tools to build wealth, income? My last episode was talking about stabilizing underinvested communities, right? So people who are having trouble affording their lives in their homes can build these units and create some income and help stabilize them staying there, right? So it's become this wonderful kind of tool, but it wasn't always that way. And so, in the beginning, they were largely considered, neighbors are like, well, what's going to happen to my sight line, and what's going to happen to parking, and my neighborhood's going to change, and everything's just going to be awful, right? So beginning 2016, you see these laws start coming out, and it's like one after another between 2016 and today that is making it easier and easier. And I just want to kind of bring up a couple of these legislative pieces, because what you've seen from 2016 to now is just tons of people who have had to really mobilize on the government level, in the private sector, and change laws and open people's minds to these wonderful kind of homes, right? And so like you start in 2016 and SB 1069 comes out, and it's a big piece of legislation. They minimize permit fees, they reduce fire requirements, and they limit parking to one space per unit, right? So they do require parking. So just remember that parking piece on this. It started needing one space per unit. Move over to 2017, more legislation. 2019, AB 671 comes out, requires local agencies to provide financial assistance plans, such as grants and incentives, to encourage homeowners to build affordable ADUs for very low to moderate income tenants. So there's this idea and this push to like, hey, we need to encourage folks to build these not just for themselves, not just for their parents, right? The granny flat idea, but for low-income people, that this is a good thing to build housing and provide it for these folks. AB 587 comes along, allows ADUs to be sold or conveyed separately from the primary residence to a qualified buyer under certain conditions, such as if the buyer is a person of low or moderate income. So there we have the beginnings of allowing people to build these units and sell them separately. And today I'll kind of talk about that, how that's evolved, right? So that was, again, in the first way they were saying, well, if a low to moderate income person builds an ADU, wouldn't it be nice if they could sell it and then stay in their unit? SB 13 comes out also in 2019. Eliminates all owner occupancy requirements by local agencies. So there was a lot of talk at one point of like, oh, you had to have a family member occupy the unit. You couldn't rent it, you couldn't sell it. You had to have, it was all designed for extended family, so they got rid of that. So that was just another piece of like saying, hey, these are good for society as a whole, right? 2020 rolls around. This was a big year for ADUs. So what happened in 2020? There was AB 3182, and that required local agencies to approve ADUs and JADUs, JADU being a junior ADU within the envelope of your house, like a basement or a garage. They're requiring local jurisdictions to approve these projects, to approve these builds within 60 days, which is amazing. So what was happening in San Francisco is like you get an ADU, request to build an ADU, and they'd sit on it for like a year or 2 years and just not say yes or no. So more legislation, pushing local jurisdictions to like, hey, we need to get this going, we need to build. And my point here is not to villainize local jurisdictions. They were often responding to their constituents, right? They're often responding to neighbors who are like, we don't want these things, or these are low priority, or these are just granny flats, and why are we doing this, or whatever. But so you had to keep pushing through legislation, and so it was very kind of, activist in some ways, right? To just keep pushing and get these regulations relaxed. Also, SB 592 comes out. It protects single-family and ADU projects by allowing homeowners to pursue legal action and seek compensation if their ADU application is unjustly denied by the city. So it gave some teeth to folks who were just like, why'd you deny this? My setbacks are good, the sightline's good, everything's good. Like, it's all electric, all these things, right? And so that was required, right? To say, okay, well, folks can actually sue now. 2021 rolls around, which allows ADUs to be sold or transferred separately from the main house if the ADU was built by a nonprofit group or sold to a low-income buyer. Again, allowing the separation and this conduization of an ADU, but only to certain buyers. So you just see this evolution, right? And so 2022 rolls around, allows homeowners to build ADUs without a dedicated parking space. And remember, they required one parking space for ADU. Now they get rid of that. It also creates financial assistance programs to help low and moderate income households build ADUs, right? So now there's some grant programs. Then there was SB 897, which prevents local governments from posting unnecessary notices and prevents a local government from delaying or denying demolition permits if an ADU permit is issued. it also allows two-story ADUs in some places. So again, like the demolition permits, like why at one point, why could you not get a demolition permit if you have an ADU permit allowed, right? So it's like, you can build it, but you can't demolish what exists there, right? So all these like weird conflicting things, they're like plucking out one after another, right? 2023 rolls around, AB 1033. Permits property owners in participating cities to construct an ADU on their land and sell it separately. This is a really big deal. And this law is, I'll go deeper into it later, probably in another episode, but California State came out with this Assembly Bill 1033, but it's not mandated. So it's actually a law that says, okay, you local jurisdictions, you cities can decide to implement it or not. And so it's great in the sense that it's like, okay, there's this mechanism now to condoize your ADU. Anybody can, regardless of income limits or who you're selling it to or who built it. But local jurisdictions, cities, can say yes or no. They can opt in or opt out. San Jose is the first city to really opt. I think Berkeley actually was the first city to opt in, but San Jose is the first city to kind of opt in and really implement it. So you go on their website and there's like a very clear ADU conversion checklist. There's a very like clear mechanism to do this, and it's great. And supposedly it's been successful and people are doing it. And so, it's quite wonderful. You think about like if you have a 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or 2-bedroom, 2-bath ADU in your backyard, and you can sell that for, I don't know, let's say maybe in San Jose, I don't know the exact number, 750, 800K, right? That is building housing for middle income folks, right? That is what these things are not intended to do, because we've already talked about the evolution, but can do, right? And so the teacher can buy a house in San Jose and doesn't have to spend $1.7 million, right? So pretty amazing. Berkeley has approved it, but they haven't implemented procedures yet. So you go on their website, there's nothing there, but they are supposedly this year, they're gonna come out and put some procedures in place to do this. Also in 2023, more money comes out. This Cal Home program comes out to provide funding for both reconstruction, rehabilitation, and brand new construction of ADUs. So people can use some grant funds. That's happening. This other AB 1332 I think is really interesting. Requires local agencies to develop a pre-approved ADU program by January 1st, 2025. So now it should be in place to streamline the process of ADU construction in California. That's an interesting idea, because what this is about is if you have an ADU builder and they have 3 models, they have these very specific models that the city has already vetted and already approved, right? They already know exactly sight lines, they know like your utility connections, they know like everything about it, and they're already approved. And so they can go on and say, okay, cool, we see your backyard, you have this amount of setback, you have this amount of this, you're this far away from the existing house, off you go, stamp it, and you move on. And so that's really interesting too, right? And so that's happening. So they're getting faster, they're getting more efficient, and I think they're a great example of moving from that scarcity mindset, overregulated, slow to adopt, to let's build these things. This is where we want to be. This is where the jobs are. Let's not go do suburban sprawl and have hour-and-a-half commutes. Let's build smaller houses here. So this took 42 years, right? So we're talking about a very long process. And the big changes have happened over the last 8 years, and that's been actually pretty fast and quite successful. In Los Angeles, 20% of new units built are ADUs. So it's a big number, and this has really changed the game. So as as I explained, there's that evolution, right, of it being very difficult to build to being much easier to build now. And I feel like right now we're in the kind of beginning stages of it being easier to finance the building of ADUs, right? I don't think ADU financing is where it needs to be. It's still hard to get. The number one way that people finance the construction of new ADUs is via cash on hand or HELOC loans. And so you have to have a huge amount of equity to get a HELOC loan that covers a $250,000 build, right? And so, and then that cash on hand, or you borrow from friends and family or whatever it is. So there's not great mechanisms. There are some loan programs out there. You could put a second on your property, second mortgage. But there's not a lot of really good streamlined, the equivalent of the 60-day approval for an ADU does not exist in the financing world, right? But there is one, and so I did want to, as part of this series, is I always want to offer solutions, right? So we're trying to buy and hold and build and manage real estate creatively because we have to here, and so there's this cool program sponsored by Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is a government entity. They do not originate loans. Fannie Mae buys loans from the open market and repackages them and securitizes them, but they're not a home loan originator. But Fannie Mae has what are called home-style loans. Home-style loans are renovation loans. So if you can think of a renovation loan as you're a buyer, you're buying a fixer house, and they loan you 80% loan to value on the house, and then you have a $100,000 repair job you need to do. They also loan you a certain percentage of the repair cost as well. So you're bundling a purchase and renovation into one loan. And so they're often called FHA. There's FHA 203K loans. There's different ways. There's different programs out there that are renovation loans. But the Fannie Mae Homestyle loan is really interesting because you can build a brand new ADU with this loan, which I think is pretty amazing. A lot of them they allow you to rehab an ADU, or they allow you to, they don't let you do a whole new build. So I think this is, a really interesting way of thinking about ADUs when you're actually out shopping, when you're actually out buying for the first time. So for a first-time home buyer, let's say, building it, you buy a house and you build a brand new ADU on the property right out of the gate is pretty amazing and interesting. And I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about how that works. So these home-style loans, what they do, the total loan can be up to 75% of either the purchase price plus renovation costs, or purchase price plus the appraised value once it's done. So they often call it after repair value, ARV. So that could be higher, right? So if your construction is 100K, you buy for 500, your construction is 100K, maybe your after repair value is 700. You've built equity, right? You've added value to it. But in this case, I'm really going to talk about the 75% of purchase price plus renovation costs is what I'm targeting here. So you go in thinking, okay, and remember, you can build a brand new ADU. The property for Fannie Mae does not have to be habitable. It can be really rough. It can be in terrible condition. It can have gutted kitchen or whatever it is, right? So that's a nice feature. But often buying fixers with conventional loans, it has to be habitable in some form, right? It has to have a functioning heater and a stove and windows that aren't all busted out or whatever it is, right? All the requirements to make it habitable. In this program, Fannie Mae is allowing non-habitable residents to be purchased, right? Because they know part of your loan is going to be repairing the house and to get it into habitable condition, right? What they also do is they offer you 6 months of financing because they know you're not going to live in the house. So say you have 6 months of work to do once the loan is closed. They know you're not going to live there. They actually bundle that amount into the cost of the loan. You're not on the hook while you're building out you're doing improvements to the house, which is pretty amazing, right? So you just take that amount that you would have owed, it's added to the principal, and you pay it back over 30 years later, right? So if you want to take advantage of this, you can do, in the Bay, you can get a loan for up to almost 1.1 million is your loan limit. So this really works for kind of like smaller houses and in rough condition. And so the way I like to think about this is, instead of just buying, the normal way you buy a fixer that's relatively habitable. This is for owner occupants, right? This is not investors. Owner occupants buy a fixer that's habitable. It can finance. They put 20% down and live in it and slowly improve it with cash out of pocket, right? And that is the normal way that kind of owner occupants buy fixers. And but there's a different way. Like I mentioned, so like in the different ways, this home style renovation loan, right? And so I'm going to do kind of an example here and run you through some basic numbers of kind of how this would work and the benefits of it, right? So if you're thinking about buying a property and you want to put an ADU on it, I love corner lots. Corner lots are great because you can kind of section off the ADU and they can have their own entrance around the corner, right? So you may enter on this side, they enter on this side, you may fence it off, and it's almost like it's not your property, right? They have their privacy, you have your privacy. They're not going down the side of your house or whatever. So I really like corner lots. I'm also thinking 4,000 square foot lot plus is good. Sometimes 3,000 square foot, it's hard to kind of jam this all in. So that's kind of the target if I was thinking about going to do exactly this. So you're going out to look for this fixer house on a corner lot. You find one, it's $550,000. Your down payment is $110,000. Your total loan is $440,000. Your improvements are $100,000. So remember, your down payment is $110,000, your improvements are $100,000. You're at $210,000 out of pocket to buy this house. No ADU, right? You've just improved the existing house and you're out $210,000. Your monthly cost to own all in is about $3,820 a month, okay? Now, you say, you know what? I can actually do a home style renovation loan, improve my existing house, and build an ADU with a very similar amount of money and actually save money on your monthly costs. So you go out, you find this fixer, 3-bed, 1-bath, $550K purchase. Again, your improvements are $100K. The new 1-bed, 1-bath ADU is $250,000. So your after repair value or cost of construction, whichever is lower is what they approve, is $900,000, right? Because you have $550 to purchase, $100 to improve the existing, $250 for the ADU, right? So you're at $900K. So the total loan is 75% of the cost of construction plus purchase. So you're borrowing $675,000. That's your total loan, right? Your down payment is 25% on the $900K. So you're $225K down payment to buy, right? In the life cycle of ADUs, your first step normally when you build an ADU in this scenario is to earn rental income. So you're gonna rent it, right? And so you're gonna rent that 1-bedroom, 1-bath ADU in Oakland for about $2,250 a month. So your monthly cost to own all in is $3,425. Remember, on the first scenario, your monthly cost to own all in was $3,820. So, and the difference in your out of pocket is only $15,000 more in this scenario with the ADU. Whereas you were $210 in scenario one, you're $225 in scenario two. So you have $15,000 out of pocket additional. That $15,000 additional earns you $395 a month or $4,740 a year. So it's a 31% annual cash on cash return on that $15,000 if you want to think about it in that way. But this is such a cool program in that your out of pocket is the same roughly, and you're saving monthly roughly $400 a month, right? So it's pretty amazing. And then back to that cycle that I love about ADUs is that you buy this house, it's at affordable your monthly cost is affordable at $34.25 a month. You have this tenant, you have some privacy, there's some separation, and you've fixed up your existing house, and you live like that for a while. And then eventually, in the life cycle of the ADU, you might want a family member in there. You might not need that income as much. You might want a family member in that space. They move in, right? They live there for a while, they move on to their next phase, right? And you may be getting ready to retire, and you want to sell that ADU because you want the chunk of cash to maybe offset your retirement or whatever it is, or to do something else, right? Now you're using AB 1033 and you're selling it, right? And you're staying in your primary residence. So it really does start off this whole kind of life cycle of the ADU. It's pretty amazing. The one challenge in buying a property through the homestyle renovation loan is that you're not as competitive of a buyer when purchasing it because there's more kind of strings attached. It's a more complicated loan. And so this actually works best on properties that are sitting on the market and the seller's waiting for a higher price and the market's not responding, and you come in with this and you're like, you actually can overpay a bit because of all this add value that you're creating all this equity through this loan, that paying a little above market for that property makes a ton of sense here. And so that's, when you're in a highly competitive situation, you're going against all cash buyers, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. But again, creative real estate ownership requires some digging and some convergence of legislation and financing programs and your own chutzpah to do this, and great things can happen. And so happy to have shared a little bit about ADU history in California. I'm so happy about this burgeoning abundance movement that's happening here, and here's a little slice of how you can kind of finance a brand new ADU, which is normally very difficult to do. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. And like and subscribe. And remember to buy, build, and manage with love, and the rest will work out. Thank you.